Right, you made it. You got through the setup. My name is Ali. I'm one of the founders of Meta, and thank you for installing a beta release. Now, we've built Meta to be the next layer of computing, so I'm super excited to show you what that's all about. It actually only take a few minutes to master the basics, and in this tutorial, we'll go through the three core elements of Meta: the Meta bar, Spaces, and the rewind. All right, let's go. We'll start with the Meta bar. To open it, hit Option Space. Now, this is your new control center for most of Meta's functionality. It's built to be used with the keyboard, and it gives you access to almost anything that ever crossed your screen. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's close this again. Let's have a look at these browser tabs. So, as you can see, we've got a couple of Chrome windows with a handful of tabs in each of them. And what I would usually do, looking for a tab is, okay, hunt it down, find it, and click it. With the Meta bar, I can just bring it up, enter a keyword, like Stack Overflow, hit return, and it brings the tab to the foreground immediately. Let's do that again with Twitter. So again, Twitter, again, part of the URL, or a keyword that fits it. You can see switch to tab, hit return, comes to the foreground. Now, if I accidentally close a tab or I decide to reopen something I've visited before, let's open the Meta bar again and access the Meta history. Twitter, you can see it from the history, most used, comes up, here's my tab again. Now, all of this works without API access to any of your services, and all your data is kept fully local. Next, Metaspaces. Metaspaces are the most powerful way to create and manage work context. Hit Option Tab to open the space switcher. And while it might have some similarities with the virtual desktops that macOS provides, they are fundamentally different. So all of these are self-contained workspaces. You can have an infinite amount of them, and it can be open like these ones or closed like this one. To create them, you've got two ways. Open the Meta bar to do it with the keyboard, type in create, or click the create space button in the space switcher, which is what we're gonna do. Let's click it, and let's create one space for presentation work. Once created, the name shows up top right, and I can start setting up and arranging my apps and my documents. So let's do it. Let's open this presentation. Let's open our task list and arrange it to the right spot, and same goes for our assets. There we go. Nice and neat. Now, I can do my work in here, and I can instantly switch to my other spaces. So let's go to the coding space. Again, self-contained, all my tools are here. Let's go back to default, empty as we left it, and back to the presentation workspace. Now, when my work is done, I open the Meta bar, hit close, and I close the presentation workspace. All the documents have been saved and are closed, and the space appears in the closed space section of our space switcher. Now, to reopen it, it's super simple. Open the space switcher, click on the closed space. It's going to detect that there are windows to restore, and we're going to tell the system to restore all of them. And all the windows are back where we left them. I'm going to show one more small thing here. So if I go in here and click this, I get the space setup information. So there's all the little bits and pieces that belong to this space are in here. Again, we can close this back up and do our work. Alrighty, now to really master spaces, there are 5 commands you want to know. We'll start with the first 3, push, pull, and copy. Now, if you think about spaces, you can see that they're kind of self-contained, and they contain a series of windows. Sometimes you want to manipulate them, want to move windows around between spaces, and that's where the push, pull, and copy commands come in. So let's do a little example. Chrome, new window. Let's look for the top 10 pitch decks that people have created. Okay, so first link looks good. Let's open it. And now I want to push this window over to my presentation workspace. How do I do that? Well, I use the meta bar. Select the window you want to push, type in push, and part of the name that you wanna of the space you want to push it to. Return, and it's gone. Now let's double check. Presentation work window is here. Perfect. Now let's do the reverse of this. So I'm gonna use exit to jump back to my default space. You can also use the space switcher if you prefer that. And I'm gonna do pull and type in pitch because that's what I remember from the window. Now it knows that this window is a Chrome window in the presentation workspace, and I'm going to pull it back in. Here it is. Last command is copy. Copy is when you want to have a window in two spaces. So let's do the same thing as with pull. So copy, pitch, it finds the correct window, and we'll copy it over here. And as you can see, it's now in both spaces. By the way, we are trying and we're continuously working on bringing these functions into the window control element top right. So you'll see there's a series of actions that you can use in that control element that shows up for almost all windows. And if you don't want it to show up, let me show you what you do. You'll go into the space switcher, click the cogwheel, and then you select these options. There's a series of options to adjust the way spaces are presented to you. Okay, now let's get to the last two special functions for Metaspaces. All right, so first, floating. Now floating allows an app to follow me to every space that I go, which is particularly useful for things like Zoom with video conferencing or video conferencing in general. So let's open Zoom up, and I bring this window to the foreground and open my meta bar, and I'm going to type in mark app as floating. So it's already selected, right? So I'm going to hit return. Now every window that Zoom opens will follow me around. How does that look in a video call? So let's do a video call. There we are. And now moving through these spaces, you can see that the video is following me around. There it is. Looking good. I should do something about this. Anyway, let's close this down. And then we go to the last element of mastering these spaces, which is marking windows and apps as transient. So transient is a neat little trick to help you get back to desktop 0. Now, you can use it, I personally use it for mail, messages, WhatsApp, in general, all the apps that I want to be able to use from any space, but I don't want them to mess up my workspace, right? So let me show you how that works. Again, let's open, this time we'll open messages. Not now, so it's just going to be empty in this example. And bring the window to the foreground, and I'm going to mark app as transient. Now, what happens now is that as long as I'm interacting with this window, it's going to stay in the foreground. But as soon as I say, let's go back to Zoom and put this to the side, within a few seconds, my messages window disappears. Let's do that again. So let's go to the coding space. Let's click on messages. Messages, it's here. Let's move it to a spot where we can see it well. And then I go back to my code. And within a few seconds, which you can set up in the settings, this window will disappear. It'll be back up instantly, and it'll be gone when you don't need it. Very nifty trick. So that's essentially it. So now you know the 5 most important commands to master the Metaspaces, and use them wisely. Now, let's take a quick look at the last piece of the puzzle, the Meta Rewind. Now, as you're using Meta, Meta is working in the background, creating a very unique view of everything you did on this machine. It's kind of our effort to allow users to fully capture their digital lives, all the tasks they worked on, everything they did, all of their breakthroughs in a very, very accessible way. And for now, maybe you can think of it as an insurance plan for everything you did on this machine. If you've seen it, it's in there. To make that possible, we've created some amazing technology that allows Meta to do this with almost zero CPU and very little storage. But let me show you what it looks like. So take your mouse, move it down to the Meta icon, and clicking on this, I enter the rewind. The rewind is might take a little bit getting used to, but you can move in time in here. So using your two fingers, so back and forth like this on your trackpad, will kind of show you what I've been up to this whole day. All of my interactions are here. If you've got a magic mouse, you can use it and scrub horizontally like this, as you can see in the little video. You've got the timeline down here, segments, and our time ruler. There's a lot more to see, but for that, we're going to switch to my personal machine. And we're back. Okay, so this is on my machine now, and as you can see, my Meta icon looks slightly different. There's an actual styling section up here where you can choose your own Meta icon, and you might also notice that some of the features in my list will not show up in yours. You know, it might be a sign of things to come. Let's jump back into the rewind. So you can look at something you just did, like me working through this React Native work, or you can start zooming out and look at, you know, the whole inception of a specific project. So this is the week, this is December, this is 2020. Let's move to November 2020 just to give you a little hint of some of these features. As you can see, I make ample use of the annotation and tagging feature, which is just awesome because I can just tag and annotate without having to leave my workflow, and it's all within my rewind. But what we're going to look at is something even further in the past, 2019. So we're going to take one of these moments, and incidentally, it's one of our early calls on some Metaspaces work we've been doing. So some of the Metaspaces early designs that we've been playing around with. How do we get back to now? We use the time pill, click here to jump to now, click it, and we're back. There's also a way to search through your rewind, which is opening the search, typing in your keyword, and here we are. So with the documents and with the things I see in the rewind, there's actual ways to interact with them. I can go and click a line of text, and it'll be available for me to work with. I can also go and select the X-ray icon, and you can see that it highlights the whole window, and I can use this to recreate the whole window with all of its tabs at the right position. It's pretty awesome. So let's get out of here. And this is the way you close it. Before we close, one last thing. A lot of the functionality is also available through this cogwheel, so you can see, you know, how to hide the controls that show the shortcuts, load the latest frames, delete a frame, and more. That's it. Now, we actually just scratched the surface of what's possible with Rewind, but we were super excited to be able to put this technology in your hands and have you play around with it and just come back with your feedback and your feature requests and what if it could do this. And I'm also super grateful that you took the time to work through this tutorial with me. And as I mentioned, if you have any feedback, we actually have a feedback page, feedback.gometa.com. But if you want to reach out directly to me, I'll post my email and Twitter contacts on one of these sites. And I'm Ali, we're Meta, and see you on the other side.